First off, welcome all the artists who participated in this year's Town and Country exhibition. As you know, after the show was installed, immediately after, the facilities were closed, an occurrence that has never happened and was unfortunate. But we're lucky that we can videotape the curators talk, and I am the curator, Paula McCarty. I also hung the exhibition. I work here hanging and curating exhibitions at Springer Cultural Center. And today we will be walking through and talking about the Blue Ribbon winners, as well as the Best of Show. There's one for the adult division and one for the youth division. Typically these winners would go on to the state in the fall, but unfortunately that has been canceled as well. So we'll get started here right away and talk about the work. The first piece I would like to talk about with the blue ribbon is Irene Kim's Bunny. And I just thought this was a wonderful drawing of a bunny. Irene is in grade 5, and I just thought the composition was beautiful. The bunny is lying down. Typically, in many bunny drawings, we see the bunny sitting, but I thought this was really unusual composition. And then if you take a look at this, she's really used her dark and light tone of her pencil quite well. If we cover up the bunny's head, we can see that this is really a lot of use of light tones. But her using the dark tones here, the really pitch black of the eye against the whites of the canvas down here or the paper, really draws the viewer's eye there. And so she just handles that really well, directing the viewer around the painting or the drawing, and then just the use of tone is pretty outstanding for someone her age, and just really well done. Craig Newman, bird photograph up here, I thought was really well executed as well. I like how he puts the focus in the foreground against this more softer edges in the background. The use of this branch is a nice compositional device in that it keeps the viewer in on the bird, and the bird's eye mimics all the berries in the picture, which I think is a nice use of repetition. And overall, it's a very simple photograph, but really well done. I'd like to talk about Emma Land's painting here of butterflies. Emma is in grade 2. So this painting of the butterflies is really impressive on a lot of levels. Just the direction of the butterflies are facing. We have some facing out, we have some in side view, and then she's given us some in 3/4 view, which is just a really lovely variety. And variety is key to keep the viewer interested in looking at the art. And she also gives us a nice variety on the colors that she uses on the butterfly. I don't know what these say, but they are probably contributing to the intent of the artist, I'm guessing. And this may be her signature here. But anyway, it was just a really nice composition. We've got a couple other maybe bees floating over this way or flying over this way. And the butterflies are flying here too, which could take us right out of the picture. But these kind of stop us right here. So it's just really nicely composed, really nice variety, and really impressive for a second grader. Elizabeth Seong did Traveling Through Space. It is mixed media, and Elizabeth is in grade 6. And I just think this is really nice. What I really like about this painting is the way the rockets are kind of bent as if they were made from rubber, which is just interesting to me. And that they're all pointing towards the moon at the very directional forces in the painting. And then the other nice thing, I think she handled the yellow fire coming out of the rockets really well. You really have to plan for that. You know, you would never get those bright yellows painting over black. And she's utilizing the white of the paper to get those really vibrant fire colors, and it works really well. The other thing, as I spoke about with the butterflies, is sometimes our compositions can take us right out of the painting, which we don't want to do. We want to keep the viewer in here. And she does a really nice job of bringing this linear drawing of an astronaut right there. So rather than being pulled out of the painting, we're kind of grounded here. So it kind of goes back and forth there between the moon and the astronaut. And I just thought it was really well done. We are going to talk about Darian Shims' Travel to Space. Darian is in grade 1, and he did this lovely painting in crayon. And Darian really understands the use of repetition in painting, which is a principle that is important to give the variety in a painting. And where he's really using repetition is in circles and rectangles. And so we've got all these planets that are circular, and all the heads of the astronauts, and these other little creatures in the painting circular, so it's this repetition of the circle. But then there's also repetition of rectangles going on that add kind of a stability, a grounded stability at the lower part of the painting. And then his use of color is really nice. It's pretty much a primary color palette of red, yellow, and blue. And overall, I just think it's pretty nice rendering of space. So congratulations. Sophia Poe did this lovely painting. It is entitled Outer Space, and it's mixed media, and she is in grade 6. And this is very similar to one that we just talked about a little while ago, and incorporates linear elements against more painterly elements, which is really a nice device. It gives this more interest, more visual interest. And I really like this. It's kind of like a walkway between these 2 planets. I'm assuming that's planet Earth. And I like how she gave us variety in the figures. So we have some that are more tonal and colorful, and others that are more linear. And this one actually seems to be flying through space. This little device here doesn't really give us a change in scale as far as space, but this receding back into space adds to spatial depth. And then of course you've got these bright orange and the blue planets against this starry background. So that's another overlap in space that works pretty well. And I just thought this is nice. Your eye just keeps going back and forth between these two and centers on this people in the middle. And it's well done, Sophia, and congratulations. Curtis Chung did this colored pencil drawing called Incarnation of Evil. And Curtis has been in the shows in past exhibitions with us, and his skills always amaze me. And this one is no exception. What I really like about this, we have an overall monochrome drawing, really. It's all done in yellows, which is a warm and fuzzy color, but it's contradicted by the title of the piece, Incarnation of Evil. I'm not sure what that means, but maybe she's not so innocent. Anyway, just beautifully, beautifully drawn, Curtis. Your pencil skills are amazing. Cameron Newman did this acrylic painting called Cottage, and it is very painterly. And when I say painterly, I mean it's very brushy. She really enjoys working with the paint. And it's not something we see so often with acrylic paint, but more with oil paint. So this could easily be mistaken for an oil painting. She handles the acrylic very well. And this is using a lot of analogous colors. And analogous colors are very close to one another on the color wheel. So we've got a lot of yellows, reds, and oranges that dominate this painting, which gives it harmony. And then our lake here, I'm assuming this is a lake in the middle, creates this kind of radial composition that keeps our eye traveling around. So we could say this is also a primary palette of red, yellow, and blue in that respect. But the other interesting thing about this painting is that we are high up looking down on this cottage and this lake, and that's a little unusual. But her painterliness is really nice and attractive, and keep up the good work. Deb Foley did this watercolor called Whimsical Delight, and Deb is in the adult division here. And this is a very complex composition, and the use of color is interesting. So we pretty much have a dominant palette of complements, blue and oranges and yellows, with little bits of red and green there that are also complements. So very harmonious in color. And then her sense of scale is interesting here. We have things that, such as a vase with hands that is really large compared to framed pictures. So the scale is a little wonky there. And the use of space is interesting. It's very clear here how we always say that warm colors come out at us in art and cool colors recede. And I think that's really evident here with all the warm objects in the painting coming out at us and all the blues really receding. We get a sense of some shallow space, not really deep space, but shallow space that I think is really interesting. And then I like how this kind of directs the viewer through, and then this kind of stops us right here. I'm not sure what this is. It almost looks like a file cabinet or something, but it's the only thing in the drawing that really shows us perspective, you know, going back in space again, but there is no really deep space. Things are rendered pretty flatly here. So it's very graphic and very design-like. And just interesting on so many levels. She incorporates bits of nature, home, fruit. It looks like these are grapes, balloons in the sky, hearts. It's just a variety of subject matter that can keep you in this painting for quite some time. Very interesting. Van Tran's charcoal powder drawing was awarded Best of Show in the adult division. And these skills with the graphite powder are just amazing. And what I really like about this was the monochrome dark tone. I mean, he looks like, the name of the piece is Contemplation, by the way, and he looks like he's contemplating something, but he also looks a little dark himself. Like if you were to meet this person, he may be a little dark and moody, and I think the color really supports that. The artist's choice to use a monochrome dark palette, and just absolutely stunning handling of material. It's Best of Show. Congratulations. Yvain Harms Aronoff, grade 3, did this little mixed media painting. I guess you really can't call it a painting, but it's a mixed media, and she is in grade 3. And what I really loved about this was just her thinking outside the box and using unconventional materials to create this abstraction. Her use of overlap is really nice, and scale, and her thoughtful placement of objects. She does repeat the square by overlapping here. We see this frequently throughout, which is really, really nice and very playful. I also really enjoyed the way she brought things off of the picture plane, which is something we don't normally see. So I just thought that was really fun, inventive, and playful. Divya Sandhill was awarded 4 blue ribbons for her series here on acrylic tribal art, and she is in the adult division. And I actually did a little investigating into the tribal art and found that this type of tribal art is from the Warli tribe in India. They are from the northern outskirts of Mumbai in western India. And they typically ground up rice into a white powder and paint on mud walls and depict everyday scenes of farming or celebrating, such as Divya did here. We have celebration, village, market, and farming here, and it's very typical of this type of art. And she used acrylic here and did a great job. So her compositions, I feel like they take on 2 different kind of formats. We've got a really radial composition here. She handled the material really nicely. It just shows people playing musical instruments and celebrating. Down here, she uses more of like kind of bands, like almost like the written word, to depict scenes of the village life. And over here, we have on the top the market where people are selling grain perhaps, or just partaking in market activities. And again, we kind of have bands of activities going on. And this one is kind of almost has like an L composition and supports this larger motif going on here. And the Warlis use this to pass on folklore, traditions in their tribe, and maybe they didn't have access to the written word, I'm not sure, but it was intended to pass on folklore. So that was interesting to learn. Leah Rademacher was awarded a blue ribbon for this photograph right here called Next Generation, and Leah is in the adult division. And I loved how the geometry kind of came into play here and created a really nice composition framing her son. And you just have all these geometric forms that are repeated by the frame itself, and then the name on the truck kind of holds us in and acts as a counterbalance to the little boy. So I thought it was really nicely composed. It's pretty much primary colors of red, yellow, and blue, very harmonious color scheme, and works really well. This is a piece by Darlene Vite, and she is in the adult division, and she has 2 ceramic pieces that both won blue ribbons. This is the first. It is titled Brains versus Brawn, and I was really impressed with the ambitious piece here. The way she incorporates texture is really interesting. It's obviously the story of the 3 pigs and the 3rd little pig who built his house of brick, and the wolf who actually comes down the chimney and falls into a pot of boiling water. So at least that's what I think this is all about. And it's a candelabra as well, but it's just very interesting use of texture with the roof and the bricks, so nicely executed. Colors are pretty muted, which keeps the focus on the pigs, which are a little lighter at the bottom and act as feet on the piece, and the window, which is also a little lighter value. So we do get a little range of darks and lights, but overall a muted palette that I think works really well. This is Darlene's other piece called Twisted Driftwood, and it is a candelabra, obviously with 3 candles on it, but just really nicely done as far as the texture on the bark and the way that it kind of twists around and keeps you going around the piece. And the candelabra, she varies the height of each candle a little bit, but it was just really nice texturally, and I think it's a really interesting piece and quite beautiful. Julia Michaela in the adult division did this, I'm assuming it's an acrylic pour painting called Splash. And we're seeing more and more of these pour paintings these days. It's kind of trendy, but there is a trick to them. You have to get the right consistency of paint to do the pour effectively. And I think what's so nice about this piece is that she utilizes some of the white of the canvas and just lets it be. The other nice thing about this painting is she kind of knew when to stop, and the variety and the size of elements in here I think is really nice. With these larger elements of the splash over here, we get a little, not so much activity, whereas over here things are kind of more active with all these little small pieces coming together, and really shows this active splash, which I think is really quite nicely. It makes me think of the artist David Hockney and his painting called Bigger Splash. So great job. Darian Kim did Shark. It's a painting, and Darian is in grade 1. And what I really love about this painting, just the beautiful pattern, the way he handled the water, this repetition of pattern is just beautiful against the shape, the shapiness of the shark. And I think that really works well. And it's, we get this nice kind of expression on the diver there that he's in big trouble, and he's looking out at the viewer like, help me. Anyway, I just thought it was just really nicely done. The drawing of the shark is quite remarkable, with all those nice sharp teeth in there, and just the content I thought was really nice. Adrian Shim is also in grade 1 and did this painting called Underwater. So the boys really like sharks. And this is just a really wonderful painting. I love the variety in the water. It's just very different as you look around the painting. I love the movement of where he placed objects in the painting, and how everything seems to kind of converge, which I thought was really interesting compositionally. Again, a really nice drawing of the shark. These sharks are, this might be another baby shark, and they just are very shapy against this very active water. And then we have some divers in here, And it looks like this shark is kind of maybe thinking about them for dinner. I'm not sure, but nice composition. Angela Jaden Kim, grade 1, did this lovely little drawing, mixed media, called Run Away from the Owl. And I just really love this big owl that is really well drawn for a first grader, coming down and descending on these other little creatures in the forest. So she's got a squirrel over here, I believe, some other little animals in the drawing, and then this little bunny who's kind of frightened looking out at the viewer. And I just love, you know, this emotion that we get from the characters that she put in her drawing, and the fact that she borders all the activity going on here with the 2 trees is really nice. And she made the 2 trees different, which is fantastic. It gives us a little, you know, comparison, and we love, as viewers, seeing those comparisons. It keeps our eye engaged in the painting or in the drawing, so great job. Sylvie Layerly did this lovely little mixed media called St. Christopher Protect Me. Sylvia is in grade 10, and I just really like the content of this piece, and it's got an emotional quality to it that I was really drawn to. The drawing is really, really well done. Hands are not an easy thing to draw, and she just did a really lovely job on that. I love this empty space in the middle. She kind of, that's an unusual composition to crop a face in half, and this empty space is kind of bordered by the figure. And then she uses a grid, and it's overlapping some other kind of pattern back there, which is interesting. But overall, this is really making smart use, I think, of the lights and darks to direct the viewer. As you can see, the hair kind of blends right in with the background, so our eye doesn't go there so much. And again, the shirt with the background, we don't go there so much when she's really, by making the skin so much lighter against the dark background, you know, our eyes are drawn there, and it was really well done. And obviously this is a boy who's maybe frightened and is asking St. Christopher for help. And I just love the content of this piece. We have a photograph here by Malia Kaplan Hartnett called Winded Love. And I think this is a very intriguing photograph. I think this is a flower, a shape of a flower in silhouette, but I'm not entirely sure. And I find that intriguing that it mimics shapes up here in the upper left-hand side. So I'm just doing this comparison and trying to figure out what this is all about, and it's very intriguing and mysterious, and I think that's a plus. And then we've got this grid. So we do get a little bit of sense of space here, with this being so sharply defined against this much softer, muted background. But I don't know the content, and I really, it's not important. I think just as far as composition and mysteriousness, I think it's a really interesting piece. Megan Uppinghouse did this lovely self-portrait in shades of blue and really handled it nicely. As far as all the tones she's incorporating with the shades of blue, and she's got a very serious kind of melancholy look on her face. And of course blue, all colors are psychological, but blue is kind of often associated with melancholy, or Picasso, for example, did a whole blue period, right? Where he was going through some emotionally turbulent times, and before he was a recognized artist, actually. So blue was a wise choice here. I think it really adds to the piece, and I think she handled the tones really well, and just a really nice job with the acrylic paint. Or actually, I'm sorry, this is oil. Nice job. Jason Her, it could be Jason Her, I'm sorry if I have that name incorrect, Bringing Heaven to Earth, an adult watercolor. And just really nicely done. I love how we have this silhouette. It looks like Los Angeles with the Dr. Seuss palm trees. I always think they remind me of Dr. Seuss. But we've got this nice silhouette of LA against this really moody, watery watercolor sky. And I think just the handling of the paint is, the contrast is quite nice, and really gives you the sense of LA and its mystique. Nice job. Irene Kim did this drawing here. It is watercolor called Inside the Gazes. And Irene, if you remember, did the bunny that we first spoke about. And she is in grade 5. And to me, this is just a really, really compelling piece. It's, again, a radial composition here, but all these figures done in tones of gray that have like a very disapproving or critical gaze centered around this very colorful subject in the middle against a black background. A very psychological piece, and he's very abstracted, or she is very abstracted, this figure in the middle. And the closer I looked at it, it almost looks like there's a cat coming over the figure's head, but I'm not sure if that is what is going on, but it's intriguing and just very psychologically powerful. The fact that this central figure is so colorful makes me feel like that he is immune from all these kind of destructive gazes. So just really powerful piece. Jaden Riggs did this wonderful drawing. He's in grade 8, and this drawing is called Decisions. And again, a lot of content in this drawing that I really loved. He has basically 2 compositions making up the entire composition. And it depicts over here a football player who maybe is successful. Over here, maybe someone who's ran into trouble with the law. And it's based on decisions we make in our life and how these decisions can take us down really different paths. But maybe our dreams are still possible, if we can turn them around and make a better decision. So I really love the content. I love the fact that he gave us like this split scenario, which is interesting. And then just this repetition. Again, I talk about repetition a lot, but these things with variety and repetition, movement through a piece are really important. And he does incorporate a lot of squares in this, which I think kind of gives it a real stability, which is really interesting and just really nicely done. So good job. Malia, Kaplan, Hartnett, another photograph that I felt was a blue winner, and Malia is grade 10, and this is called Senses Lost, and it is a nice, well, at first I thought it was a painting actually, because when I look at it, it just looks like paint, but it's actually a photograph of some dance shoes, and I thought it was just interesting compositionally. Just the shapes of the shoes, the shapes within the shoes I think are interesting. It's an intriguing photograph, much like the one I just spoke about with her flower. And she incorporates parts of nature and some fabric here. It gives us some more shapes here to play against those bigger shapes of the shoes. And I think it's just an interesting photo. So another nice job. Una Joyce did this lovely piece called Flowery and Branch, and it is mixed media. Una is in grade 4, so I was pretty impressed with this. What I found interesting, it's kind of capturing nature and trying to contain it. And it utilizes a real branch found in nature, but incorporates man-made crocheted flowers, which I thought was interesting, this idea of man-made versus the natural. And I love how she placed the flowers, the different size, the different color, the variety, keeps us moving up and down the piece. And then capturing nature, like as if trying to hold on to it and containing it in this box, which is made of, it looks like wood and man-made materials. So just on a conceptual level, I thought it was pretty interesting and really well done. Elizabeth Seong, The Remembrance of Her Childhood is a lovely pencil drawing, and Elizabeth is in grade 6. And what really struck me about this was the use of tone, because it's comprised, we can divide our lights, darks, and our middle tones into those 3 large groups. And what she has done here is we've got this big black shape here for her sweater, and the only other place that really kind of comes to that same degree of darkness are the eyes and the lips, which are very expressive. And then we've got this really light background with her light face, and then just a very small portion of the middle tones. which is a very good use of dividing that up. A lot of times they'll tell you to use dominant tone and then a secondary one and then maybe a small amount of the third. And I think she does a really good job with that. And this is just very psychological. I feel like, that's not an easy thing to do, is capture the mood or the character of someone. And I think this is a very expressive piece that works quite well. And it's because, she's just really made these contrast with the area around the eyes, and that is very powerful. Catherine Williams did fireworks in acrylic, and Catherine is in grade 5. Again, it's another one of these very popular acrylic pours, but I felt like it was really well controlled here, and again, she knew when to stop. What is so nice about this piece is that there's a focal point, and you do have to get the consistency of the paint right for these to work. I think this one works beautifully. It's very attractive. We get this really big active shape in the middle, and then like this kind of repetitive shape going on all around it that kind of mimics this larger one and acts as a border here. The pinks and the reds and the blues over here kind of keep us contained in here. This is pretty much, I would say, a primary color palette again, with reds and blues and just a smidge of yellow that dominate. And I think it's just a very attractive piece. Thomas Seong did Waiting for Friends, Waiting for Friends. It's mixed media, and Thomas is in grade 4. And I just thought this was just a really nice use of line and shape. The variety in mark making is really nice. This repetition of this form coming all throughout, and the way he's zoomed in on the owl is really nice. We get a little bit of shadow here that his feathers are reflecting onto his body, which I thought was beautiful. These hatch marks, against these more active lines around the owl, I thought were pretty successful, and I thought it was just a really nice drawing of an owl. Noah Rademacher did his, I'm assuming it's his father's big rig, and Noah is in grade 2. And I just really love this piece. It's just really comprised of squares. So we have the big rig, which is a square. We have the grill of the big rig, which is a square. Maybe this is a step and some mirrors, and then the frame itself is square. So it's just comprised of all these squares, which really works well. Very simple, direct, and I love how maybe this is the wheel inside the big rig or the back of the seats, but they act as eyes, and it gives this big rig personality. He looks pretty pleased being what he is, and I just think it's a pretty happy picture of a big rig, so great job. Lauren Lametta, congratulations. You have best of show here for Do I Fit In? And Lauren is in grade 11, and this is an oil painting. And I was just really taken with this painting on so many levels. Color, for one. She is using complements of red and green and blue and orange, just beautiful. We have just such a variety in the reds and the blues and greens. It's quite lovely. And I love her composition. It's like a triangular composition here, which kind of brings the viewer in and kind of contains us right where we should be. And so that's quite lovely. And I like the content and the title of this. I thought that was just really relevant today. Do I Fit In? It's about 2 teenage girls, maybe looks like they're going to Chinatown, wondering how they might be perceived, or will they fit in by their peers or whatnot. And I just think it's a pretty important message. And just the handling of the paint. Again, it's a very painterly painting, and just really warm tones that are really lovely. And this device down here is kind of a translation from English to Chinese, how to say hello, goodbye, thank you, you're welcome, and no. And this kind of acts like a device to keep us also in here. and as does the car. But overall, we've got like a triangular composition that I think is just, you know, it adds dynamics to the painting. You know, if we had more horizontals or verticals, the painting becomes more stable. So I just think that adds a dynamic energy to the painting, and it's just really outstanding. So congratulations. Atticus Geiger, grade K, did this drawing of Pele's Tears, which I learned what Pele's Tears were. They're like teardrop volcanic glass that is formed in the process of a volcano spewing, I think. So that's something new to me. Pele's Tears, and I just thought this was just so nicely painted, so confident, and just I love the brush stroke seems so self-assured in the sky and really everywhere. The clouds mimic the volcanic ash, which I think is just really nice. So what's interesting about this painting also is we were just talking about how maybe a triangle composition can create more dynamic in a painting. And what I found interesting was this is very stable. You know, you have horizontal and then a very strong vertical, which gives a painting stability, but this is a painting of a very unstable thing, a volcano. So I thought that was really interesting and kind of fun, but just beautiful handling of the paint, Atticus, and lovely, lovely job. Gyeong Mi-do did hopscotch. Some of you may know a hopscotch bakery here in town on John Street, and this is just a really lovely drawing of hopscotch that captures it quite nicely. The artist handles the medium really well. It's a winter scene. We are at an unusually high level here looking down at the bakery. I think the perspective is off just a little bit, but it doesn't seem to hurt at all. We really get a nice sense of the essence of this bakery in town, which is just really delightful, and nice handling of watercolor overall. So good job. Max Wang did this lovely drawing in colored pencil of Newton's 3 apples, and I just really enjoyed the variety in the apples and the way that he gives us such a variety in the tone and color on each apple. The yellows and greens in particular I think are a little trickier to handle, and he does a really nice job with that. Also in design, 3s are generally better than 2 because it gives the viewer just one more thing to kind of you know, bounce their eye around rather than just from object to object. We have a 3rd that adds a dynamic that is nice. And so the sense of scale here, you know, a variety in size is nice. The radial composition, the shine on the apple, the sense of reflected light coming up off the bottom of this apple before it gets dark again and then light again, works really well. The stems could keep us more into the painting, but not a bad job. I think there's enough going on here that it warranted a blue ribbon, and really nice work on the colored pencil. Deb Foley did this wonderful drawing in colored chalk of burger and fries. And I think what is so striking about Deb's drawing is this, in particular, the top half of this bun, which just has that shine that we're all familiar with. You know, you could just, you know what the texture of that bun is, and I think that is just so successful. Really, overall, the whole drawing works really well. And the fries, we know that they're crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, just the way most of us like them. And just a really beautiful drawing. The lettuce works really well, the tomato and onion. And this is what they mean when they say supersize me. This is a big drawing. Nice job. Gyeong Mi-do did 2 watercolor drawings here, acorn wreath and cotton wreath, and watercolor in the adult division. This is the same artist that did the drawing of hopscotch. Just really handles the watercolor medium super well, and the wreath inherently keeps us in the picture because it's circular. So, but what I like about these, there's just this incredible use of the material, the watercolor, the sense of shadow on the ribbon, the variety in the turns of the cotton pods. You know, some are facing us, some are facing away. There's just a really, some are facing down, just nice variety there that is so important. We get a lot of soft and hard edges in this piece, When we say soft edges, we're talking about where the lights are similar, or the darks are similar to one another, with the object in the background, and those playing with that, areas where some are closer in value or similar in lights or similar in darks, is really important in art, because not everything is handled the same way. And I think this is really beautifully done, and plays with that idea a little bit. So really nice drawing there. And then this is a very similar piece, Acorn Wreath, and this one gives us a little more sense of space, in that we have some acorns and some berries here that are more faintly rendered. And so that gives us just a tiny bit of sense of shallow space that I think works pretty well. The palette is beautiful, analogous colors of reds and yellows and oranges, that is so beautiful. And just super nice handling of the tones of the acorn, and great job.